Yo, what's up guys? Got another tutorial and this one is on adventure and landscape photographer Yang B. I'll get into Instagram and show you guys his work. So if we come down, you can straight away see there's a nice coolness to the highlights, and then we need to add in a bit of warmth into the shadows to complement those cool highlights. And then if we keep going, say this image for example, you can see there's a really strong fade, so we're gonna have to bring that black point up in the curves, shadow point down, and then you get that nice gradual fade to the image. And then there's a real creaminess to his photos, so we're gonna have to drop that clarity as well. And then if we keep coming down, we'll see the image we're gonna be working with, this one right here. So gonna be trying to recreate the exact edit, and I've got the settings for this photo right here. So 24mm to get that nice wide shot, 2.8, so just enough to expose the image properly, a little bit of a depth of field there, shutter speed 125 and ISO 200. So he's always using the 24mm guys for almost all of his shots, and that just helps get that landscape there. It's not real wide, but he makes really good use of the 1.4, so he's always shooting at blue hour, so it helps him get that extra bit of light, but he also has a lot of depth of field to his shot, sometimes really knocking out that background. So if we come up, you can see it in a lot of his shots. Keep coming up, and then for portraits he's still using the 24mm, so that just creates a real dramatic image, and they're always in really nice backdrops, so really knocking out that background with the 1.4 and the wide focal length. So if we come up, and it just really allows them to capture very dark images in blue hour. He's always shooting after sunset. So yeah, he's also got his presets available guys, so if you come up here, I'll be putting all of his links down in the description, so go down there, give him a follow, and as you can see, if you come over here, it will take you over to his website. And then if you click down here, you can check out his presets. So if you come down, he's got his before and afters. It's quite similar to the one we'll be working with. So yeah, definitely worth coming over and checking them out guys. If you like his style, get his whole set, and then you should be pretty sorted. If we go back to his Instagram, we have actually done a tutorial on his style before. I think we worked with this shot right here, so if you like this tutorial, go look for this one as well. And yeah, so he's using the Canon 5D Mark IV, he's always using 24mm, and yeah, let's try to get this nice fade with a coolness to the image. There's quite a few greens as well, but otherwise, yeah, let's get into it. So here's his image from his Instagram and the raw unedited photo that he has sent to me. So first thing I'm looking at over here is gonna be the fade. I'm gonna try to get the fade first and the correct exposure, so the contrast and all that. And from what I can see is that we've pretty much got the correct contrast at the moment. So it's quite hard to see, but we have the same amount of shadows and we just need a fade. But I'll show you what happens if we add in a fade now. So we look like we've got the same contrast, and then if I add in a fade, we lose all that contrast and it doesn't look quite right. But if we come back, so the reason I think we've got the same contrast here is we have shadows over in his image, but they're just faded. And same with the highlights, but if I just try to explain with the shadows, so if you come up to an area of the image, such as say this square here, you can see in his image, it's just a black square. You can't see what is in that black square. But if we come over here and we lift the shadows up, we can start to see that there's detail in there. We can see that there's some lines in there, and so we know the shadows aren't that high. But this is an extreme example. So we know our shadows and our exposure is exposing this area about there. So if we lift up the fade, now we just need to add in the contrast. Okay, so I'll just show you an image we've done before. So we've done this tutorial for this image before, his image as well. So go watch this one, guys, if you like the one we're working on at the moment. So as you can see, we're going to follow the same steps. Add in this really nice fade, and then we've got to bring back some of that contrast. And yeah, that's sort of what we're going to be going for. Pretty similar settings I think we'll be going for there. So I've come back. Now let's just expose it a bit more. Let's take down. Okay, so if we just get rid of the fade there. Okay, so let's get this a bit closer to what we want. Come pretty high up and then really drop the shadows. So you got to keep that contrast. Okay, so as you can see, we probably did too much contrast in the slider up here. So that could probably come back to about there. But what I'll do is fine tune it with these sliders, because we can take contrast out by moving these individually. So say for example, bring down the highlights, bringing up the shadows, taking down the whites, and bringing up the blacks is almost the same as bringing down the contrast there, because that's what you're doing. So if we just go back, let's add our contrast back in there how we had it. So let's just fine tune our contrast now. And so I want to again look at areas like I was talking about before. We look a bit too dark, say in here. I want to be able to see a bit more in the detail down there. So I'll lift the shadows and I'll lift the blacks. And then as you can see, we're too bright in the highlights, so I want to drop that. And I quite often drop the highlights because that's where you really gain back a lot of detail in the brighter areas. And the whites the whites will sort of give you a flatter look. So he's got quite a flat look to his image, and so we'll drop that quite a bit, flat look. But the highlights is where you really get back a lot of that detail. So that's a very, very common thing I see in people's edits, is dropping the highlights. Okay, so I think our fade is looking pretty good there. So as I said before, you sort of can hardly make out what the detail is in there, and it looks the same over in our image. So we have got room for a little more contrast. I'll just do a very, very small red, green and blue S-curve. Okay, so that's just a really small S-curve done in each of these channels, and I just like to do that because it gives me control later on. So if I want a little more red in the shadows, I can just lift that up a tiny bit, and it's a good idea just in your presets to have a, even if it's a very small S-curve going on, to do it very slightly. And yeah, it gives you great control over your colors. And yeah, let's go back up to RGB, and if I just get rid of this curve and then I turn the curves here on and off, you can see we just added a tiny bit of contrast. There's not much color change there at all. This is something I like to do there. So if we just go back and then introduce our fade back in, now we are looking pretty similar, and we should probably focus a bit more on our colors now. So let's just, we already know we need to drop the vibrance a lot because it's not a very vibrant image. So vibrance is sort of just the brightness and the highlights and midtones. We want to dampen them, bring that down quite a bit. And okay, let's warm up the image quite a bit. We just look a little cold. Go about there. Let's okay, so with clarity and dehaze, he has a very creamy look to his images. They look, so bringing down the clarity will give us that nice creamy soft look. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of dehaze because that kind of adds to that look as well. Just softness, especially like in the highlights and stuff like that. Bit of atmosphere. Okay. And then your image can look a little soft sometimes if you bring down the clarity a lot. But then because we brought down the clarity so much, you sort of get away with bringing the sharpening up quite a bit. So we'll just bring the sharpening quite a bit. And normally I would lift up the masking, but since we've just brought the clarity down so much, I think we don't need to do that. So let's roll with that. Okay, coming back up. I think we're about good up here. Let's move on to, say, some split toning. So split toning is pretty important for this image. Let's go with some warmth in the shadows. You can see we're looking sort of nothing in the shadows at the moment, but we want this nice redness. It's kind of hard to tell what color it is because it's so subtle, but it's a warmth to the shadows, and it sort of just gives, yeah, a red or orange down there. So let's go with a nice orange. Or yellow. You can see the color shift. go with that. And then you can see, say, for example, in our mountains back there, in our clouds, we've got too much of that orange. It's really getting in the entire of our image. We don't want that. We only want it in the shadows. So what we'll do is pretty much add the opposite color into the highlights, which is, so an orangey yellow is a purpley blue, be the opposite. And you can see that. You can see there's a slight purple to the image, or blue. A lot of blue in the highlights. So we'll put quite a bit of that in there. Okay, and you can see what that has done. So we've just got too much blue in there now, but we will take down the saturation of those blues quite a bit. But you want quite a bit. You might have thought we put too much in, but I knew I would bring down the saturation of those blues, because it is important to get those blues, say, in areas that aren't originally blue. So the highlights that aren't originally blue. That's why I brought that down and brought that up. Okay. And then split toning. I think we're good for now. Let's actually, for the shadows, I'll come right down here. Since we've only got two options, we can only pick two colors in the split toning. Come down. I want to add a little bit of green into the shadows, just a little bit. Okay, let's come back up. Let's work on bring it down just a touch. Let's work on some HSL to fine tune some of these colors. So we've got yellows out in front of us. If we just shift that, you can see what that's doing. I want to shift them to more of an orange. As you can see, they're darker orange. And then you can see the oranges here also affecting the same areas. So it's quite hard to pick which one it is. So you got to pick a place, say, let's try so as you can see, the yellows are affecting up here and out in the clouds, and the oranges aren't affecting those, like, say, up here. So what we'll do is I can see a lot more red and stuff where the yellows are affecting. So I'm going to shift the yellows rather than the oranges, or maybe even a bit of both. But I saw more in the yellows. And yeah, it's just tricky when they're affecting the same area. The blues, so let's see where the blues are affecting. Sort of out there, and I can see a slight shift of a teal. So they're pretty good at the moment, pretty similar. I'll just go about there. Saturation, so reds, maybe bring them down just a touch. Oranges, I think everything can come down a touch. Yellows, bring them down. Greens. There's not a lot in this image, but I think we've got to bring them down quite a bit. Okay, on to luminance now. And so he likes to shoot sunset, everyone does, and blue hour. So what you can do is up the luminance of the yellows, and that will just see what it it sort of just enhances where that light is hitting. So it just gives the appearance of more light streaming in and hitting all those areas. So quite like to bring that up, and I think that's what he's done. And deeper oranges, let's just get them a little deeper, and that will really affect your skin tones if you've got skin tones in that. And then I'm going to bring down the blues, and that will sort of complement the bringing up of the yellows, so that will darken the darker areas during sunset because they will be blue. And then if I just turn luminance on and off, so almost looks like we added in more contrast, but we just changed the brightness of two opposite colors. So kind of like that. Okay, so let's come down. Noise reduction, I think we're good. Let's come down. Might just have to do vignetting now. So there's a very, very slight vignetting. It's quite hard to see, but there is a bit of it. So, and it's a nice gradual one. So just do a little bit. And then midpoint, so the vignette moves pretty far into the image. Around this. Let's keep it down this end. Feather it out a bit. It's very subtle. And then highlights. Don't need it for this image, but quite often you want to keep your vignette away from your highlights. So we'll leave that up. Okay, and then just a very small amount of grain, I think. It's quite hard to tell. There's because it's a screenshot off Instagram. It's a bit fuzzy, so it's hard to tell how much grain, but just a tiny bit. Just give it a little bit of texture to the image. Alright, there's a before and after. I think that looks pretty good. I don't think we need to do any brushes or anything like that. So that's about it, guys. If you like this tutorial, definitely go look for this one here. So we've already done one on his style, so you'll probably like that one as well. And yeah, I'll be obviously linking up all of his stuff down in the description, guys. Go give him a follow because he's got amazing work, really amazing work, constantly putting out great images. And yeah, go check out his presets, guys. I'll put a link down there. Check out my presets if you're liking these tutorials as well. And yeah, comment who you guys want to see, because that way I can go reach out to them on Instagram, ask them to send in a photo and do a tutorial on them. So make sure you do that for me. And yeah, leave a comment, leave a like, comment how I can maybe improve these videos. Yeah, and if you guys are into video and LUTs, check out MaartenSchrader.com. There'll be links down there. I just can't quite post video stuff on here. I sort of want to keep it photography and photo editing because it's going so well. I really want to put some video editing out there, but it might hurt the brand and people sending in images. Yeah, that's about it, guys. I think we really nailed this one. So that fade is really important there, really important. And then you just got to keep, I know this image looks like it doesn't have much contrast, but it kind of does because it's got such a heavy fade. So yeah, it's almost got the exact same contrast as originally shot, but with a fade in there, and the shadows maybe lifted a little wee bit, but the fade will do that a little too. It will bring out a little bit of detail, but otherwise focus on detail you see in the shadows and highlights up here, and then the flatness. So I'll just quickly show you again. So flatness, see how that affects the brightness, say of our clouds and stuff. Whereas the highlights, that's going to reveal a lot of detail. And if I bring it up, you lose a lot of detail. So that's the difference between the curves and the sliders up here. And yeah, bring down the clarity for that real creamy look to your landscape. And then don't be afraid to bring the sharpening up too much if you bring down the clarity that much. And yeah, warmth in the shadows there, complemented with some blues. And yeah, that's about it, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.